Well, I'm here this morning with Victoria Guido, VP of Operations at STSI. And Victoria, she's the lead of the DevOps community for the Women Who Code group here in DC. So definitely going to ask her a bit about her involvement and what all she's brought as one of our tech leads in this space. So when she's not doing operational transformations and leading exciting tech projects, Victoria enjoys traveling and rock climbing. So please join me in welcoming Victoria Guido to the Women Who Code online stage.
Thank you.
Welcome, Victoria.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so we know each other from those DevOps events, and you've been so helpful in helping me to learn a little bit about this space coming from my background in data science. So I'm hoping that we can kick things off just by learning more about how you found out about Women Who Code and how you got involved.
Yeah, so I first went to a Women Who Code event with a friend of mine to do an Intro to Ruby day, actually. And she had been there before. She said it was really fun. And so we went and we had a great time. We actually did an exercise where like one group did the front end and the next person did the back end. And then the third group had to like present what they did. So I really enjoyed it. And it was such like a warm and welcoming group. And I said, well, we should have a DevOps group within Women Who Code. And so we did. And we just started spinning it up and having people come out for it. And it turned out to be something that the group was really interested in.
That's really great. So how would you describe DevOps to someone who is unfamiliar with that terminology?
Right. To understand DevOps, you have to have some idea of like how IT systems and applications are built. Traditionally, there's a team that builds the code, and then there's the team that runs the operations and makes sure the system is up and running and performing in security. And traditionally, those two teams were very separate. And there's actually like a wall between them sometimes a contractual wall if you're in government contracting. And what would happen, they call it the wall of confusion, because the developers are trying to put out new features. What's their main motivation. And they would just kind of pass it over and say, okay, well, now it's ops. You put it into the system and make it work. And the ops team is trying to make sure the system is stable. So there's that natural conflict of interest. So DevOps is trying to bring those two groups together, trying to reduce the silos within an organization and have everyone be more collaborative, and then introducing automation to automate some of those manual tasks that make that difficult.
Awesome. And what qualities make somebody well suited to enter a career in DevOps?
In DevOps, that's a really good question. I think that a lot of people think about DevOps as being very, very technical and a little bit intimidating. I think that the backgrounds that I see that I think lends well to DevOps, one is having any kind of operations background. So if you worked at a help desk, if you did documentation or business analysis, there are a lot of roles within DevOps that lend itself really well to that. Of course, the main thing, like knowing Linux and knowing Linux administration is like one of the key skill sets. So if you have exposure to that is great. But really, it's almost like a librarian type person or someone who's very detail oriented and does good documentation and good communication skills as well, if you're thinking about it that way.
Yes, good documentation is key. And I also love that you touch on good communication. I am sure that that's an important component when you're dealing with these different stakeholder groups that may have, in the short term, at least, cross purposes, although obviously the long-term goal is to ensure smooth and streamlined operations for the company. Great. So maybe we can hear a little bit more about like specific examples of your work in DevOps. But before I jump into what your typical day looks like, I'd love to hear a bit more about Women Who Code. So who's the target audience for this group, and what does it mean to be a part of the Women Who Code community?
So Women Who Code is an international nonprofit that is working to inspire women to enter and succeed in careers in technology. So DC is actually our largest chapter. We have the most events and the most members in our Slack and the most members in our meetup. And it's really for anyone who is just entering the field or curious about entering the field, or if you've been in technology for a while, maybe you're just starting out. What's great is that there's this group of people who can support you. And if you have a question or if you're need some advice, you can just, ask on the Slack channel. Or if you're trying to maybe elevate your career and you want to say like, I am an expert in Python or data scientist, so I'm going to give a talk on it. Here's a safe space where you can practice that talk and practice your skills, and get that opportunity to really highlight your own excellence, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a really great space to learn and to be able to start to develop those presentation skills, communication about these technical issues.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, can you tell us a little bit about the speaker series and career development event that is taking place this upcoming Sunday, September 26th?
Yes, Saturday. September 26th.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is an event we started actually this spring. We were going to do an in-person event, and then obviously that changed and we did a virtual event. But the idea is to create a day where we're focusing on connecting people with those mentorship opportunities, with interview practice, reviewing their portfolio, whether you're trying to get your first job in tech or you're trying to get a new job in tech. Being able to get to practice those like skills that you need to get into the door, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so what does the agenda for the day look like? What kind of services can the participants expect to receive, and via what technological platforms?
Right. So we will have speakers live streaming on YouTube throughout the day on different topics about their careers, about technology. And we will also have a list of volunteers who have signed up to provide mentorship, interview practice, portfolio reviews, or just general like career tech advice, right? So that's what participants can watch the YouTube stream, or they can sign up for a one-on-one session with a mentor. And there will also be recruiters who are actively hiring for roles that you can connect with and potentially make a job match with.
Awesome. Yeah. So just to summarize, on Saturday, September 26th, we'll be having a career event, and it'll feature these three components. So the first is like resume reviews, portfolio reviews, practice interviews. The participants can dial in to receive mentorship from like in a one-on-one setting with Women Who Code leaders in 15-minute blocks. Is that correct?
Correct. Women Who Code leaders, also other industry leaders are participating. So there's a good group of people who are out there.
Oh, fabulous. That's great. Really like such an invaluable service to be able to get some feedback and advice. Second component is the speaker series taking place on Zoom and YouTube. So highlighting some experienced women, letting them speak at length about their time in an interview setting just like this one. So consider this the teaser trailer for more of what will be to come in a week and a half. Mm-hmm. And then that third component is the potential to speak live with recruiters who are actually looking to fill positions. Mm-hmm. All right. Great. So transitioning now to your experience at STSI, can you talk a little bit about this company overall? And also, in the interest of our participants, are you aware if they're hiring?
Yes, so STSI, we are a digital services firm. It's been around for 25 years. We are focused on the civilian space and increasing the public's access to government services through digital services practices. So right now, we are actively pipelining at the current phase that we're in with government contracting. We're always looking to meet new candidates, and we're happy to, also give career advice and practice interviewing and look at resumes and build those relationships over time. Because as you might know, as a government contractor, when we win new awards, we have to ramp up very quickly. And that's what we're anticipating at some point next year or maybe later this fall. So
that's exciting. Yeah. Okay, so take a look out for STSI during our recruiting event and in subsequent communications about open opportunities.
Yep.
Great. So tell me about a typical day working in DevOps. What does that look like?
Right. So for my role now as a VP of operations, what I pitched it as when I got this job last year is that I bring those traditional, those DevOps practices into traditional business operations. So in the past, I've worked for large federal and financial institutions on the kind of DevOps side. And now I'm bringing those concepts like blameless postmortems and stand-ups and other communication and collaboration tools into a business operations team. So right now, my typical day is very varied being in operations. Depends on the time of year and what's going on in the business. But for an example, I might spend a whole day on recruiting and employee engagement, or I would spend a day like interviewing the different members of our headquarters team and understanding, are they able to accomplish their job? Do they have everything they need? What tools, technologies, and processes do we need to enable them to do their work better? It could be like evaluating a new technology and identifying if that's going to work in our tech stack and if it's secure enough and has high enough quality and all that. It could also be, just analyzing our help desk and ensuring that if there are recurring tickets, what kinds of things can we shift off and get some of that manual work automated. And also just, there could be like, this fall is coming up the strategic planning session. So, how are we operating? What is our current status? How do we compare to how we did last year? And what kind of things do we need to do long-term and big picture wise for next year?
This is really awesome. So to summarize overall, it's a huge performance improvement responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes, so
sounds
that is, trying to take it to the next level, right?
really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so if you're just joining us or you need a refresher, I'm speaking with Victoria Guido, who, as it says on her lovely background slide, is the VP of Operations at a government contracting firm called STSI that's focused on the civilian marketplace. So Victoria is also a leader in Women Who Code, the organization that's sponsoring this upcoming fall career services event. Victoria is responsible for executing complex cloud security and DevOps projects. So we're continuing to chat about those projects, her work in DevOps, and her experience at Women Who Code. So next up, I wanted to ask you, what are your favorite aspects of your current role, and perhaps historically some of the work that you've done to, bring you to this vaunted position? And then what are some challenges that you have faced in your journey in tech?
I think the first part of the question, what I really enjoy is being in a place to influence the company culture and to bring in more women and more diverse candidates into the company and create a sense of inclusion and belonging while they're there. At my current job, just in the last year, I've been a part of hiring 60% of the company's women. And in my job before that, I also was a big part in raising the overall company percentage to 40% women in the organization. Right now at STSI, we're at 30%. So, and there's other numbers, of course, that we're tracking, but being able to bring up other people around you is probably the greatest part of my job. And then the second part of your question was what challenges I have seen. I think there are always challenges with being, one, a little bit younger and appearing younger as well, and also being a woman. I think that there are certain assumptions that are made when you come in the door. And I usually try to get upfront with like, okay, here's my qualifications. This is how long I've been working in tech. These are the agencies that I've worked for. And usually most people accept that and take that into account. And I'm, at the table and have a strong voice. I think there have been challenges where, you're kind of immediately assumed to be in a certain particular position within the company, or that you might not have experience or knowledge of what you're talking about. And you kind of always have to be upfront about those things sometimes to make it clear.
That is a really great piece of advice. I'm just taking notes here for my own use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so critical. So if I can ask somewhat of a leading question, or perhaps play devil's advocate, why is it in fact important for a technology firm to actively work towards adding more women to their workforce?
Yeah, and not just women, but other groups as well, right? Like to take a look at like how diverse are we? I think that the evidence, if you have a diverse group and they're engaged and they're being retained for a long time, that indicates that you have a really healthy and inclusive culture. When you find that your women leave after a year or people aren't interested in joining your company, there might be some institutional problems within your organization or with your leadership that are not only making a toxic environment for women and minorities, but also creating a toxic environment for everyone on the team. So when you invest in diversity and inclusion, you're actually investing in your overall company health and culture.
That's a great perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really helpful way to sell it and to speak to what benefits the overall organization, in addition to this intrinsic benefit of increasing the representation of underrepresented groups. So,
and there's been so many studies that show that more diverse groups create better products and are more profitable businesses long term. And I think it is because of that inclusiveness. And when you get a lot of different opinions about your product or about your system, and they're all heard and incorporated into what you're building, that's what makes you successful.
100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I like what you speak to too in your answer about retention, and that being crucial in terms of that's where the rubber meets the road. So that's a really great metric for how companies can think about their success in these endeavors, not just how many women, how many Black people, how many people of other groups that have historically not had the opportunity to enter tech are we letting in the door, but also are they comfortable staying here? Do they feel like they have a seat at the table and that their voice is being heard?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's really important. And obviously that's a key thing that as Women Who Code, we're looking to build leaders who are capable and who are comfortable, going off and applying for these jobs and making positive changes at their organization.
Absolutely.
All right. So what has been your proudest accomplishment to date in the workplace?
Yeah, I am proud of like my individual work accomplishments where I'm, hiring the high percentage of women at the company. This year, I also helped the company grow by 20% in the first 6 months that I was here, which is really exciting. But personally, the things that I'm proudest of and the things that I look back on and I'm really happy about are the individuals who I've helped, even with spend an hour helping them practice for an interview or encouraging them to give a talk and to get into DevOps. And then you see them several years later and they're just flourishing and doing really well and are really happy. So I think that, the most proudest thing is the people that I brought up along with me and been able to help in their own careers and excel in technology. So giving my pitch for people to participate on Saturday too.
Yeah, absolutely. Still time to sign up and get involved. Yep. So I also wanted to ask you about what kinds of things you've been doing for fun outside of work.
Oh, for fun? Well, I am a big rock climber, as you mentioned in the beginning. So the gyms are open, and I have been going back to Sport Rock Alexandria to get ready for a trip this October for the New River Gorge in West Virginia. So yeah, it's going to be really great. Trying to get strong after taking several months off.
Yeah, wow. It's interesting to hear about people's stories of going back into things that they've taken a break from, and also getting into new hobbies as well. Right. So kind of like an interesting feature of this time, but I'm really excited for your upcoming trip. That sounds awesome. Okay, so we are almost at 20 minutes in our interview so far, and these sessions are meant to be 30 minutes. So typically at this point, we would be transitioning to audience questions. So I want to talk a little bit about how that's going to work in the on the Saturday, September 26th event. So so during that time, we'll have this platform open called Slido, and it's free. You can just go in and submit questions anonymously, and it'll pop up on our little Women Who Code event board. And then you can also upvote the questions that come from the community. So we'll be using Slido for each of these sessions to aggregate audience questions based on popularity. So definitely encourage participants to utilize that platform so they can think critically about what they're hearing from the interviewers, and also like get their own voices out there so we can get some questions answered. And since we're just doing this as a teaser trailer, we don't have the questions from the audience yet. I'm going to transition now into doing like some shorter, more fun questions. So the goal here is to, maybe like a little quicker, try to get them answered in like 45 seconds to a minute. So we'll do like a speed round here.
Ready.
Okay. So first up, in 1 minute or less, what advice would you give to someone entering the tech field?
1 minute or less. I think finding your support group is the biggest thing. Like if you're trying to get into tech, whether it's Women Who Code or Black Code Collective, there's also, I think, a new Latinx group within DC. Just finding a group of supportive people who you can be friends with, who you can get advice from, who can help you network and help you build your connections. Because that's how I got started, was a referral to a company, right? So building that support group is the biggest thing.
Huge. Yeah. What predictions do you have for the next 2 to 3 years in tech?
2 to 3 years? Ooh, that's a great question. Well, with the pandemic, there's been a big increase in cybercrime and security. So I think that companies are going to continue to focus on building security into their pipelines. And that's going to, DevSecOps is already a thing, but it's going to be even more important.
Yeah.
It's interesting. 2 to 3 years isn't too much time, but a lot of big things could change, especially with the uncertainty over the next couple of months. Who knows what's going to happen? It's a dangerous game to be predicting things, for sure.
Do you want to talk a bit about any kind of moonshot predictions that you have for the next, 10 to 15 years?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see if some organizations might not go back to hosting on-prem, but with, obviously cloud management technology built into their own on-prem services. We'll see if that becomes popular. I know of at least one company that's done that already. But I think that might be my biggest moonshot one that I have. So some organizations might be pushing to go back to on-prem.
Pushing to go back.
Yeah, to actually, maybe it's even like instead of migrating to the cloud, they would just upgrade how they're currently managing their on-prem services.
Okay, interesting. And I think that, I don't have enough expertise to comment on that. Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'd love to get some discussion going around that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So question to return to at a future time. All right. What is your superpower as a female leader in business?
My superpower is actually in meeting facilitation and being able to stop someone who's going over or clarify or raise up a point that somebody else was saying, because that's a really hard skill to have, I think, and just being willing to actually say like, oh, we're at time, or this is like being able to move to the next topic gracefully. That's I think what most people would say that is my superpower.
Really nice. Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job here. And clearly, like, you've touched on the importance of communication throughout this interview. So that's clearly something for our participants to think about. Yeah, I've heard it said that there's no such, or like soft skills. It's kind of a misnomer because they're really all just skills. All right. So what is your favorite resource for learning about DevOps?
Oh, for learning about DevOps, well, I have to promote Devops DC, which is another meetup that I support in the area. Just a really friendly group of practitioners who are very open and helpful. And there are always interesting topics at the meetup, and they share as well like other resources for learning. I think that Linux Academy is one of the online platform tools that I've used frequently to actually like hands-on learn and have labs to build things out. But those two things together, and there's a couple of different like learning platforms out there, but having an online group to actually ask the question, because sometimes you can go through the tutorial, but in real life, things might work differently.
Yeah, once again, I am taking notes because I think DevOps is so important. And, there's only so much you can do as a data scientist if you don't have support from a good DevOps team.
And there's
So
also the Devops Days series of conferences. That's an international series. It's a really interesting format. What they do is that in the morning there are talks and lightning talks after that. And in the afternoon, it's actually an unconference or an open conference where the meeting participants can propose topics they want to talk about and discuss with others, and everyone votes on what they want to talk about, and then you all get together in a group and have those conversations, which there's a lot of conferences I think that you only get like an hour of networking time, and this way you actually get to like network with people who, and you have a topic to start on talking about, and you can really get that kind of real life advice that you would want from that group of people too.
that is so fun.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a great idea. So to dive a little bit deeper on that, do you have and I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you know what technology platform that they use to facilitate the
open
breakouts?
They actually did sticky notes and and markers. So the breakouts are very I have seen people do it with online with Mural. So you have people can write their own sticky notes and then you can vote on the sticky notes after.
Cool. Okay, yeah, I'd love to see more stuff like that because it helps, the real in-person communications that we're lacking at this time. Like anything that can be done to replicate that in the digital setting, I think is so critical.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. What is your favorite nonfiction book and what is your favorite fiction book?
Nonfiction. Well, for nonfiction book right now, I am reading the new Jim Crow, which has been really insightful, things that I assumed or knew already, but provides a lot of like hard statistics and fodder for arguing with people about this issue, which I think is going to be great. I was like, should I say that or should I say that Michelle Obama's book that I read last year? That was a really, really good one. Her memoir.
You can say they're a tie.
They're a tie. That's the one I'm reading right now versus one that might be my favorite that I would like go back to and read again.
Okay.
Fiction book. Ooh, I really have to think about that one. I read a lot of books. I try to read at least one or two very difficult like fiction novels per year. I'll say like I read Half of the Yellow Sun by the author whose name I am blanking on now. That was one of my really enjoyable books that I read last year.
And what is the topic?
It's about the I'm going to say the right country. I'm going to look it up before I say it. It is about the Nigerian Civil War, and it's two sisters who get separated and then what happens to them afterwards.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds really engaging. And that's an excellent goal to pick some challenging books in the fiction space and really delve into them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, awesome. So talk to me a little bit about whether your goals have changed since you first entered the career force.
Oh, yeah. So when I got out of college, when I finished my degree, I have a degree in economics. I had actually been intending to do more like business intelligence, but I didn't want to apply to the business school. So I just got a degree in economics and then worked at the help desk throughout college. So that was my like IT and like analysis kind of degree. I decided that I wanted to be a project manager when I got out of school because one, I knew I was kind of bossy. And two, at the time, I was like, oh, project management, that'll stay around forever. It's not like I'll learn a technology and then it will change. Like project management's probably going to stay the same. But then, of course, like 5 or 6 years into it, there's all this agile stuff. And now like product management has become more popular. I did get my master's in information technology and project management, which is still useful from time to time. But I think that, if I could go back, I might focus, if the data science is now a thing, I would like be really interested in like pursuing that more closely. So yeah, I did change. I mean, I did continue, like once I got my PMP and I was officially a project manager, I was like, okay, well, what do I do now? Like, what's my next goal? Like that was my goal. I did it. Now what am I doing? And now it's focusing on, becoming an executive in a technology company, and maybe someday starting my own company, maybe. But right now I'm really happy to be able to like be so involved in the leadership team and get that experience for the next step, right?
Right, that's great. I too studied economics, and I wish that I had studied something more technical. However, I do think there's a lot of transferable skills in terms of learning about systems and rules-based thinking,
Right.
and then being in tech is all about continuous learning, right? So having studied something different, it's not the end of the world because there'll always be that new technology or a new system, like you were talking about in the shifts that are taking place in the product or project/product management space, right?
Absolutely. Yes, I was talking to somebody else about this too. It's like there's so much to learn, and you can feel like, oh, like I really want to like dive into Docker, dive into this thing. And you can feel this pressure like to be that 10x developer. And it's like, there's so many roles in the technology industry. Like you don't always have to be a 10x developer, right? Like you can still be very effective in the industry, by just knowing a little bit how to code, or knowing a little bit about Python. But I don't know about your degree in economics. We actually learned like SPSS and like Excel macros, and that's kind of like the most technical they went with it.
Econometrics.
Yeah, exactly.
Such a lovely class, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Tough.
Yeah.
Useful.
Great.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else that we can talk about before we wrap up?
Um, I don't think so. I think that we covered a lot of good topics. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me this morning, and I'm excited for Saturday.
Yeah, I'm excited for Saturday. Thank you so much, Victoria, for telling us about your experience, VP of Operations, your background in DevOps, and your involvement across, in so many ways to benefit the DC tech community. So thank you so much for this time. It's been a delightful conversation.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks.
All right.